Right, should we get started then? So, welcome to anyone who may be new. This is just a free-for-all discussion. Anyone can talk about whatever they want. I do have something very, very interesting to start with, though. It's big news. I will be doing this on the WoW Flash as well. I'm not sure whether I might record WoW Flash again tomorrow. It's a bit changeable what day I do that, because we're always at the moment in anticipation of news. You know, people were going, oh, they're going to announce the beta opening on Monday, and then nothing. And I really didn't get a feeling of any buzz yesterday either. I was sort of joking about it. Hi, guys. And then people are going, oh, there's some big news related to World of Warcraft being announced this Friday. And maybe there is. I don't know. I don't know where people have got this from. I haven't seen Blizzard say there's some big news being announced on Friday. And if they had, I would agree that there's two types of big news they can announce. One is that beta's opening, but I don't think it makes sense to open beta up on a Friday. Why would you open it up just before the weekend when it's always going to be unstable as well? I mean, that's just silly. I would have thought it makes more sense to open it up at the start of the week, but I don't know. The other bit of big news that could be is they're announcing their lineup for 2018, what we're going to be getting in 2018. That would potentially make more sense, even though, you know, we sort of know the beta's supposed to be open up soon. At the same time, these problems with patch 10.3.5, as I said in that video, are going to have an impact. And for all those people going, oh, don't be such a, wet blanket, it was a problem, but then they fixed it. Well, they haven't fixed it. It's not fixed. It's better. We can now raid. Sounds aren't working properly. I had a bit of a problem yesterday. Someone very kindly gave me a weak aura that went BAM! Every time a super important interrupt on an ad I'm not hitting needed interrupting. So that was fantastic then. The problem wasn't consistent. So some casts were like being missed because the sound wasn't happening. So I had to keep a careful eye on it. That made problems with the ads. Have I ever known a patch release on such short general notice? I can't recall one. I can't obviously swear there has never been one, but I don't recall there ever being one with basically... I mean, the day before is not notice. Because you've got to think about what do you need notice for. You need notice because if anything's going to change in a patch, you need to be able to get, capitalise on it. So there were lots of things going to be changing in this patch. So people might have liked a week's notice and they didn't get that. So, oh, hi, Sereno. Wondering how come you were not so keen on the Diablo 3 Greater Rift experience in WoW. It just seems to me the sort of thing that would be good in a single-player game and not an MMO. Like, we all know you need solo stuff in an MMO. Like, I play Elder Scrolls Online and Star Wars: The Old Republic and sometimes Lord of the Rings Online exclusively as a single-player game, even though they're MMOs. So, obviously I wouldn't be carrying on with my subscription if I were forced to do group stuff every time I went online. Because, I don't play with friends. I'm not part of a guild or anything like that. So we need some of that. But it's always a bit of a problem if you put so much in that people will think, well, what's the point of doing that? You should be incentivized to do the group work. And if you had super challenging solo content, ultimately some rewards are going to be needed in order to do it, because that's what WoW does. It incentivizes you with gear. I keep arguing that it should incentivize us more with cosmetic stuff, but it doesn't. It incentivizes us with gear ultimately. There is some cosmetic rewards, very little. I mean, challenge mode's okay. When that came in, that was purely cosmetic, but 2 expansions down the line, it's turned into Mythic Plus and it rewards gear. Ultimately, that's what would happen with that content, I feel. And at that point, it maybe becomes like Star Wars: The Old Republic, which I gather, again, I can't speak from personal experience in terms of endgame, but I gather is seen as basically a single-player game. It's a good single-player game, but it's a single-player game. Hi, Red Chamber. You're watching me today at work. Oh, you weren't watching me. You got me worried then. I'm thinking, have you got a web camera in my lab? Someone's spying on me at work. You mean you're at work and you're watching my videos? Fine. That's a different matter. But yes, there's some really exciting news. There was a tweet by someone who almost never tweets. So Chris Metzen, of course, we know is no longer working at World of Warcraft. I'm sure some people would have seen this as well. Or I say I'm sure. I wouldn't blame you if you haven't. It's generally not worth following Chris Metzen on Twitch because I think he's tweeted 3 times in his life. He doesn't tweet very often. But he tweeted something today, and it was absolutely fantastic. Where is it now? This made my warm heart. So, Chris Metzen, Human Retribution Paladin, says, yes, I love Thrall and the Horde a lot, but I've been playing Human Paladin since I was 12. Massively in common with me, because that's me. That is me. I started, like, people sometimes ask why I always play Paladin. It doesn't matter what they do to Paladins in WoW. I will always play a Paladin. If there's a fantasy game where you have a Paladin archetype or anything close to a Paladin, I will always play that. I play a template in Elder Scrolls Online. You know, there isn't anything equivalent in Lord of the Rings Online, so whatever. I play Champion there because, you know, dual wielding is like classy. Baldur's Gate, when I make my party of 6, I have 2 Paladins in it. One of them dual wielding, because dual wielding is cool. What else do I play? Star Wars: The Old Republic. All right, there isn't a Paladin class in that. Fine. And then in like when it was Warhammer Online, I played like Warrior Priest first of all on Order, and then Discipler came, which is sort of Paladin. So yeah, but that's exactly what started me off. So my first ever fantasy game was Dungeons and Dragons, as it probably is for a lot of people of my generation and Chris's generation. I don't know how old he is. Is it actually? Someone look up how old he is, please, because he might not be that much older than me. He will be older than me, I'm sure, but he might not be that much older than me. And he doesn't look that much older, actually. So I was invited to play Dungeons and Dragons by like relatives. And first of all, I played a wizard. You know, because the typical 4-person party, always thought, oh, he's only a couple of years older than me. Oh, nice. I knew he was about my age. I knew he must be. Anyway, yeah, so I played a wizard, because the typical 4-party thing was a fighter, a wizard, like a thief and a cleric. So, you know, the other people had chosen their things. I played, a wizard. But I wasn't that keen on it. I wasn't very keen on it. Because I kept wanting to charge in. You know, it was like, you're a wizard, get the back. I'll protect you. No. And then someone at the end of it said, do you know what? You play a lot like a paladin. So the next game, I played a paladin. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I was a bit hesitant at first because, you know, it didn't seem to me to be brilliant. Like, swapping out a wizard and putting a paladin in didn't seem like a great trade-off. But, you know, the beauty of Dungeons & Dragons is the dungeon master can, you know, do things to make sure it all works out. They can do what they like. So ever since then, I played a paladin in any fantasy game. So, of course, when World of Warcraft came out, like, I didn't get World of Warcraft as soon as it came out. But I knew about it. I'd played the Warcraft games. I was still playing Warcraft 3 at the time. You know, I still kept coming back to that game. And then, but I knew it was coming back. I thought, I'm not sure I would like an MMO. I didn't like the idea of it. And then a friend of mine, like my oldest friend, who were flatmates at the time, and he got it, and he said, you should get this, really good. And I just said to him, can you... No, it's not Recunate. It's nothing to do with Rets, ironically, sort of. He put the word Retribution in. This is just Paladins. And I said, can you play a Paladin? And he said, yes. I said, okay. So I bought it the next day after work. And there we go. So I was never going to play anything other than a Paladin. If he'd have told me, yes, you can, but I'm a Horde player, because he was a hunter, and he was playing on the same realm as his like friends from work and stuff. So if he'd have been Horde, he'd have said, yes, but we won't be able to play together. I may never have got into WoW. So, it's there you go. But yeah, it's so Chris Metzen. I would never have guessed. I always said he was a good chap, Chris Metzen. So there you go. I'm not very good at Photoshop, but there I did a little Chris Metzen paladin. Look, that's what he might look like as a paladin. But yeah. So I thought that's actually the biggest news I've heard for ages. It's really weird. Like, he hardly ever tweets. I don't even know. It's not even a reply to something. That's what gets me. It's not even a reply to something. He's just said it out of the blue. I don't know what's prompted it. This man hardly ever tweets anything. And yeah, there we go. There we go. Anyway, let's get rid of those. So let's have a look. Okay, some proper questions. Can we talk about recruiter friend changes? Yes. Okay. So recruiter friends. So they've nerfed it down from, let me get this right, an extra 200% XP down to 50. Is that right? Is that am I correct in that? I've never done Recruit a Friend, so I'm not always up with things. But he's... Yeah, so the Recruit a Friend has been nerfed experience. The rationale being, whether it's fair enough or not, I don't know. The rationale being that with the zone scaling changes, that there's a risk that when you're leveling up, if you had too much of an XP boost, you would go through a dungeon. As if anyone's doing dungeons anymore. Oh, funny. But yeah, so you go through a dungeon and you suddenly go up loads of levels, so you get a load of new abilities. Response, I've read the blue post on it. I don't know whether that's the same as the response. Because what I've read is where they've explained it. It's not a reply to a question, as far as I can tell. It's just an actual post. Now, if they've also replied to a specific query, then no, I may not have read that. But yeah, I mean that was what struck me as being quite funny. So they'd get now. I agree that you shouldn't get loads of abilities all at once. That's what I mean. I've talked ad infinitum about what I think leveling should be, and certainly abilities should be spaced out so that you get one at a time and you get to learn to use it, and then you get another one. You know, you integrate them one at a time. So certainly you wouldn't want to be getting loads at once. But it just made me laugh when it said, oh, if you go into a dungeon, because although I've not experienced it yet, I haven't done the leveling in zone scaling yet. I'm going to be doing it in a few weeks, but not yet. There's lots of people telling me that the queue, which doesn't surprise me at all, that the queues for dungeons are much longer now, because there were people, and I don't agree with this either. I don't think people should have done this, but there were people who were just queuing up for dungeons and just sitting in Orgrimmar, you know, eating a biscuit, you know, stack of Jaffa cakes there, and just going, queue for a dungeon, do a dungeon, blah, 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 dungeon over, right, queue for another one, eat another Jaffa cake. And that seems, you know, so I don't think that's a good thing. You know, I'm glad that that's not incentivized anymore. But then it's potentially gone the other way, where people who just want to do leveling and in between are questing, which is probably a good way of doing it, they're going to be waiting a long time. It's not the wait for me as well, because some people are saying like half an hour queue. Half an hour queue for me, I know a lot of people won't like it. I think that's a good thing. Half an hour of questing, then you get a dungeon, then another half hour question, another dungeon. That seems fine to me. What I would not be happy about is if it's half an hour to get into a dungeon, and then part way through the dungeon or right at the start, whatever, someone drops out, and it's like, oof. I mean, if it's a DPS, no one cares, I suppose. But if a tank or the healer does, then it's like, we've spent half an hour in a queue here, we've come in here and you've buggered off. Because that happens in dungeons. You know, especially if they're queuing up for a random one and they don't get the one they want. So, yeah. Right, okay, so let's have a look. Community seems to be getting a knickers and a twist so much over this. Blizzard makes the leveling much faster and easier. Another leveling is too easy. Well, to be fair, the thing is, like, it's never the community says, oh, this is bad, change it, and then they change it, and then, oh, they're moaning about something else. It is different people. It's like there's one section of the community wants one thing, and they were happy with the status quo before, and another group weren't, and then they change it, and it's not like the same people are complaining, it's just different people. So the people who were complaining before might be happy, or they might not. And the people who were happy before are not. But, I mean, change is always going to upset some people, because whatever the game is at the moment, or at any moment in WoW's history, the people playing it liked it like that. That's why this classic WoW has so many people excited, because there were people who just liked the game like that. They didn't want it to change to what it is now, which is fair enough. And now they're, you know, going to hopefully be given the game in the sort of setting that they wanted. But, you know, I mean, I understand games have to change. And in many ways, it has improved. But I think, to a certain extent, with some of the improvements, they've sort of thrown out the baby with the bathwater. There's some things that has been lost. And Dungeons being an event has been lost. Isn't the model of quest storyline through a zone leading into a dungeon a pretty good model? Yes, it is. Like the model, for example, that used to exist. The problem is that, like, they've done it again in Legion. This is what they've gone back to in Legion, because you do a series of quests through a dungeon and it culminates in a dungeon quest at the end. The problem with the earlier ones is you now just get your quest from the dungeon. You don't have to do the zone. That's a bit of a disappointment for me. When they introduced that, I know it was there for convenience, but I didn't like that at all. You know, and I think you should have got the quest from doing the zones. And if you didn't do the zones and you just queued up to do the dungeon, well, that's fine. You're just queuing up to do a dungeon. You know, for blue gear or just whatever, bit of experience. But to get the quest, you should have done the quest lines. Otherwise, they don't mean anything to you. They give you this quest text. It's got some blurb in it. It means nothing. It teaches you nothing about the game. And, you know, if leveling is going to serve any purpose at all, it should be to teach you about the game. And WoW is indeed mainly about endgame, and this is one of the things you know, if I have to attack something, I do attack it. And this is what I mean about, you know, leveling content and non-leveling content. All of the content should be just content. There shouldn't be any such thing. But what happens in WoW is you level by doing quests and dungeons. As soon as you stop leveling, maybe this was less so in Legion, maybe they've improved it a bit in Legion, but certainly in previous expansions, as soon as you stop leveling, the first thing I would do on a character is delete all my quests. Because quests were leveling content. That's how it was. I immediately deleted those quests and I went and did the stuff that you can only do at level cap. And, you know, so it's like, and because of that, that's why I think with Suramar, where Blizzard were making a conscious effort to say, no, questing isn't just for leveling. They created a zone with quests in it specifically for endgame. You couldn't get there unless you were level capped. And that whole system, I think, is Blizzard consciously trying to move people's perceptions away from questing being for leveling, more towards one of it being, you know, it's just content. It's content you do while you're leveling, but it's also content you carry on doing when you've stopped leveling. And zone scaling is the only way to do that as well. You couldn't do it in WoW before, because why would you do it? Because it's not going to reward any XP. Whereas now, I mean, it still doesn't reward XP, but it can be rewarding because it's scaled. You have 31 level 110s. Oh my goodness. Good, yeah. So let's have a look, Sasha. What he did enjoy was leveling through the Scarab event world quest in Silithus these last few days. If we had this kind of events everywhere, it would make leveling more fun for people who are tired of doing the same story quests in the same order. Yes, if there was more variety, I absolutely agree with that. But again, this is why, I mean, I notice they're talking of, there's something they say in their blue text which is actually technically incorrect. So again, they're talking about this dynamic leveling. They say, as you may have heard, patch 7.3.5 significantly overhauled the level experience in World of Warcraft. And it says, so that zones from 1 to 100 will dynamically scale to your character's level. But they don't. They scale in brackets. So they don't scale to your level. So that's not true. I wish it did. I know some people don't. I know some people are pleased with the way Blizzard have done it. Quite a lot of people. Because when I used to talk about zone scaling before Blizzard even announced it, because it's an obvious thing to bring into it, you know, my ideal for it was not lots of other people's ideal for it. But yeah, I just wish it all scaled. Because then you just carry on doing it. Like Star Wars The Old Republic, as I say, I've been playing that. I started playing it again like this Christmas. And for the first time ever, I got a character to level cap. And when I got to level cap, I just carried on doing what I was doing. I didn't change what I was doing. You know, I got different rewards. There's a different form of experience you get after that, and you get rewards for it, which is, you know, there's the incentive there. But I just carried on doing the quests because, you know, you didn't just abandon it and then start to do other content. There's no need. Same in Elder Scrolls Online. You just carry on doing quests, but you just have access to different stuff as well to add on to it. Do you think people who want to level slowly should do with the new system and no heirlooms? Heirlooms should give us faster XP, their optional choice. Well, when I do my leveling, I'm at least initially going to do it without heirlooms. But part of the reason for that is I want to properly test it out. And I don't think you can do with heirlooms. And the other reason is because I might base some of it on like the beginner series to WoW I was going to do. Too much Diablo 3 WoW nowadays. Well, World of Warcraft, I don't think it is as good these days for this particular... not as good for these particular things. It used to be very good at seeing a good feature in another game and putting it into WoW, but improving it as well. Like, there were several things that that came into WoW that I would recognise from other games. I go, you've got that from the other game. But they improved it, and that was really good. So taking good ideas from something, absolutely they should do. And if there are some good ideas in Diablo, it's their own game. Absolutely nick that. But yeah, you have to be a bit careful. Again, it comes to that, why wouldn't I favour greater rifts as a thing for WoW? Diablo you can play with friends, but ultimately it's a single player game. Whereas WoW, you can play alone, but ultimately is a more social game that you're supposed to play with other people. And the incentive should always be to play with other people. Now, whether that's with small groups for like Mythic Plus, or the scenarios like the island stuff that's coming in the next expansion, that's fine too. But the premium content should be group stuff in an MMO, really. You should be encouraged to want to join a guild and play with like-minded people. I actually don't think there's enough emphasis on that as well. I think far too many people fall into the trap of joining a random guild that just spams them, oh, do you want to join our guild? It's awesome, when they first start playing the game. And it's like, it's not awesome at all. I mean, it's not as bad as it used to be when the cesspool guilds were about, but still, it's not good. Because people are not joining a guild because of common interest. They're just joining a guild because they're new to the game and they've been randomly invited, and then they never sort of really think about the fact that might be other types of guilds that are more suitable for them. At least they removed RNGs with purchase legendaries. Oh, wait. Yes. What's my view on the RAF changes? I don't have a firm view because I've not used the recruiter friend, but it did make me laugh, the reasoning. It could have, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't seem to have backfired. Now, if I give you a real life, if I give you a real life example, so it did remind me of, in the UK, there's a supermarket chain called Tesco, and this loyalty card. They were the first ones to come out with loyalty cards in this country, and you get your points for like buying shopping there. And some people you can turn those in if you want for discount vouchers for like holidays and entries into museums and theatre shows and stuff like that. And some of them can be worth 3 or 4 times the face value of your voucher. So some people can make a lot of savings with these things. And what Tesco did is, because some of these vouchers were like 2 times the value, some were 3 times, some were 4 times. And they wanted to just merge it and make it simpler from their point of view and just make everything 3 times the value, which was great for the stuff that used to be twice the value, not so good for people who were saving up the stuff that was 4 times the value. So they massively kicked off. So now what Tesco have done is gone, okay, we'll do it, but in a year's time to give people a year's grace. Now, if there'd been the same backlash here, you'd sort of feel maybe Blizzard would have done the same thing. But they doesn't seem to have been. So it will be as it is. It's still, as they say, you know, a significant XP boost. It's not really costing anything. And you still get a mount out of it, don't you? So, I mean, I know some people who will buy the recruiter friend, just buy copies. They're recruiting themselves just to get the mounts. I mean, I haven't done that. I have been tempted, actually, but I haven't actually done it. So you think it comes down to the majority of games being spoiled? Hang on. Yeah, sorry, reading this comment. They want the best gear from nothing. They want a right to see everything without working for it. Same goes for leveling. Leveling was never intended to be a rush in WoW. In vanilla, I never see a lot of things that added to the mystery and expansion of the world. Having things to work towards and work for is a key part of an MMO. Not sure about that. I mean, I would agree that would sort of be nice. Although I think the reason why the leveling took so long is because a lot of, again, Blizzard right from the start have had this attitude of, this is leveling content, this is endgame content. And there wasn't enough endgame content when it came out. So they needed to stall you. Knowing full well there'll be some people that would rush it, but you know, that's just how it is. And But whether that's how an MMO should be will be a matter of opinion. Ultimately, I think what an MMO should definitely be is something that encourages you to play with other people. But it should also make it easy to do that, you know, to play with strangers. And I think WoW does do that at endgame, because I know a lot of people decry it, but you have, like, you know, the group finder is a really good way of doing that, and you've got LFR and stuff like that, and those are things that ease you into it. Now, the fact that some people ease into that and never move above it is disappointing. It would be nice if people saw it as an initial stepping stone to going on to joining a guild and maybe doing normal raids or Mythic Plus dungeons or whatever, and move on from there. Not enough do, but, you know, that's all there is to it. Didn't leveling take so long in vanilla because there was not enough quests to actually take to cap? Yeah, people keep saying that. No. I mean, okay, if it was like that right at the start, I can't comment. But all I can say is from May 2005, there were loads of quests. I missed out loads of zones and loads of quests in every... I don't think I finished every quest in any zone. And there were loads of quests still left over. So unless you're talking about, like, whenever it was, November 2004, when it came out in North America. And it came out in Europe before... I didn't play it as soon as it came out in Europe either. It came out in Europe March 2005. But I played it May 2005. That's about half a year after it came out. At that point, at least, there was loads of quests. Absolutely loads of them. So that was all. I don't know what that was about. The reason it took me a long time was because it took... In fact, I still remember it took me 21 game days, which even by the standards of World of Warcraft at the time was a very, very long time. The reason for that was because, as I do in every MMO, I wanted to level up my professions along with my character. Now, obviously, the most efficient way to do it is just to level up your character and then go back and do all the stuff where it'll be easier to get the materials. But no, I wanted to keep it up in step. And the professions I had chosen were tailoring and enchanting. So that meant lots of grinding mobs for cloth. Okay, well, at least you're getting experience for that. But also for enchanting, there was no way I could just grind out all the greens I needed to just enchant to keep getting my skill up. Ultimately, I needed to buy some extra stuff off the auction house, and that means selling stuff. So I used to spend hours in Ironforge selling enchants, because you couldn't just put it on a vellum like you can now and put it on the auction house. You had to enchant the gear directly, which meant being in Ironforge and just spending ages selling your enchants for a few silver. And that was it. That's what I had to do. So, yeah, I spent a lot of time either farming mobs, which was inefficient as a form of XP gain, but at least you were getting something, or staying in Ironforge, getting 0 XP. But, and also, if I got a quest where I wanted to do a dungeon, well, that meant finding a dungeon group. Again, you wouldn't... Sometimes you could get that in the zone you were in, but most of the time that meant going back to Ironforge again and just asking and trying to get a group formed for that dungeon. Well, yes, Red Chamber. I mean, there's a lot of, like, when I've done videos on it, I've been like having, not inundated, but a few people will say, no, there were nowhere near enough quests, we ran out of quests. Absolute codswallop. Again, unless they're talking about the period between November 2004 and up to and including April 2005. I cannot comment about that, but literally, unless the day before I bought the game, they suddenly added twice as many quests, I don't really believe it. What's my favourite Alliance city? Ironforge, actually. Because it's nice and lady. It's a nice circle. You know, there's gnomes in it, but you can miss those out. It's fine. And because you can go round the circle, or you can cut through. You've got all the middle bit to cut through. You can quickly get from where you want to get to wherever else you want to get really quickly. It's the reason why I like Undercity out of the Horde cities. Unfortunately, that's, you know, we're about to kick the shit out of that. I can't be helped. It's not my idea. If I was going to beat up any Horde city, it would be Silvermoon. That's horrendous. Horrendous place. Can't even fly in it to, like, you know, make it a bit easier to get around. In vanilla, the game was less endgame focused. That's because there wasn't any endgame stuff to do. If you were interested... Well, I know that's a bit of a lie. But there wasn't much, should we say. But the world aspect of it I did like. The fact that you explored areas... was good. And that's something they could bring back with the zone scaling, but they don't seem to want to do that. Because they could easily make quests. And I don't mean like sometimes you get a, you know, like sometimes you get a quest that takes you to an old zone, but all you do is go to that old, like the art, some of the artifact quests, like for the Protection Paladin, you had to go to Howling Fjord or something. But you just went there, did a thing and buggered off back again. If they had proper zone scaling for everything, they could easily, as part of, you know, new expansion, yeah, sure, bring us new zones, but they could easily give us a quest that sent us off to, say, Feralus or something like that, and not just to do a thing and come back, but actually set up completely new set of NPCs there with new quests for that expansion, and you could reuse parts of the old zones and have us properly exploring again. And they just, by doing the zone scaling as they've done it, you completely remove that possibility. Undercity, though, is easy to get because it's a circle, and it's a circle where you can cut through things as well. Not as good as Ironforge, but ultimately it's a circle. That's what I quite like about it. Whereas Orgrimmar, you have to know your way around it. Silvermoon, you definitely have to know your way around it. Thunderbluff, you have to know your way around it. You know, all the other cities, you have to know where things are. Otherwise, you run around like a blue-ass fly. Or ask a guard, you know, but even then. Whereas the other ones, you can just go around in a circle till you find it. It's easy. So even aspects such as, okay, I'm in Ironforge and I'm restocking on food, potion, etc. Then I'm taking 10-minute flight path to a zone. Felt like you were out adventuring. Time investment to get there. There was a lot of time investment to get there. Like, again, I suppose this would be different for Horde and Alliance. Like, as an Alliance player, Molten Core and Blackwing Lair were fairly close to you, but Onyxia's Lair less so. So for Onyxia's Lair, you had to go from Ironforge to Menethil Harbour, which wasn't flooded then. Get the boat, and then you get that to Theramore, and then rather than going around the roads because that'd take you forever, you used to cut across some water, so you were swimming basically. So Azure Silk Belt, make sure you've got your Azure Silk Belt on for faster swim speed. If there would usually be some smart ass priest who would use levitate and go past, but without levitating you, little arsehole. And yeah, you'd run through there to get to Onyxia's Lair. There was one time I remember when one of our warriors stood too close to the edge of the docks at Menethil Harbour. The boat came along, knocks them into the water, and when the boat arrives, if you're in the water, you ain't got time to get back, and it'll disappear before you get back onto the dock. So, you know. But it was a journey. Also, you could remember little things that you had to do before flying as well. So to get to Blackwing Lair, what you had to do is you had to come in to Blackrock Mountain, from the Searing Gorge end, and then there was a chain to climb up. It was just, well, I say Blackwing Lair, it was the same, you know, as Lower Blackrock Spire and Upper Blackrock Spire. So you have to climb up this chain and then jump across the ledge to get there. There was another route up, but that had mobs in the way, so that was the way to do it without bumping into any mobs. And for Molten Core or Blackrock Depths as well, you could jump off. You had to aim properly, otherwise you end up in the lava, you'd be dead. But you could basically jump, especially as a paladin, you could bubble. But anyone else could survive the fall damage, I think. Not, you know, just about. Attunement and having raids in dungeons. Well, I'm not so bothered about having the raids in the dungeons. I mean, ultimately, all the attunement did for the like Molten Core and Blackwing Lair was let you teleport to the dungeon, to the raids. Because yes, the raids were halfway through those. Well, in the case of Blackrock Depths, at the end of the dungeon, and Upper Blackrock Spire, it was halfway through. So yeah, it allowed you to like teleport. Am I in favour of attunements? I don't think there'd be any point these days, because back then there was doing a dungeon was a significant event in itself. Now it's not. It'd be like, okay, so what would you want? To get attuned to Emerald Nightmare, you have to do Dark Art Thicket. It's the work of 15 minutes. So it wouldn't really be worth it. And if they could put in a longer quest chain. But again, what would be the point? I don't think there would be any point. So there's so many comments, I can't keep up with them all. You would hazard a guess that a fair percentage of the player base don't seriously raid. Well, certainly, I absolutely agree with that. And before LFR, questing to max level was there. Wow. No, there were... I mean, there were other things you could do casually, like PvP, you know, random battlegrounds, that sort of thing. In fact, Call to Arms, when that used to exist, going into Alterac Valley and just doing that as a weekend was a really good way to level up. You used to get loads of experience from doing that. Some people are naturally less inclined to mingle, especially with a toxic-seeming player base, unwilling to tolerate new players. This is always a fear of mine, yeah. I mean, like when I play the other things, the reason why I haven't been trying to get into dungeon runs in ESO or stuff like that is exactly that. If that same thing exists there, I can well imagine an intolerance to new players, especially from people who've done it loads and loads of times. I might cock it up spectacularly. Achievements would have to be either incredibly short or account bound. Well, I agree with more stuff being account bound, to be fair. I understand like needing alts as a sort of time sink for people who've completed other aspects of the game and don't want to do the super challenging stuff. Because I get that, because the stuff to do on your main, if you're not going to do the really challenging stuff, you can actually burn through the content fairly quickly. Or you could before Legion. Like in Legion, they've used artifact power and, you know, legendary acquisition specifically as a way to get people to keep doing content on one character. It provides more than enough to do on one character. And Mythic Plus dungeons are a route to that as well, even if you don't want to do Mythic raiding. So, and you can do it at whatever level you're comfortable with. So I don't think there's a great need to use alts as a time sink, in which case I think they could ease up on the reins, in my opinion. Anyway. Screw new players. Feels like Blizzard's making all these changes for new players. I don't feel like it at all. I think the new player experience is shocking, and I don't see anything in 7.3.5 to change it. You know, it might improve it, but it doesn't change it. I think it's a terrible experience for new players, World of Warcraft. And I sometimes wonder how people cope unless they've got a friend guiding them through it. Or unless they're a veteran of a different MMO. Like, if you've played one MMO seriously, then you're likely to be able to adapt to another one, because certain aspects of MMOs are fairly common and you sort of know what to do. Or at least you know what to do or where to go to find help. Both the new and the old player experience is really bad. Well, I don't know. I mean, I play it. I can't think it's... And I play it and pay for 2 accounts. So I can't think it's bad. I spend most of my time on it. But I do think the new player experience is bad. I'm not... Yeah, well, you think it's made it worse for new players? I don't think it's made it worse. I think it's still better. I just think it's not better enough. It's still not good enough. If you were a new player and saw how long leveling is taking right now, I would go find another game. That has always been my fear, just looking, because you don't even know how long it's going to take you. You just look at the number of levels. If you've got any idea about role-playing games in general, you'll sort of know that's going to take a bloody long time, without having any idea how long it will actually take you. In fact, it may be that it doesn't even take you as long as it looks. 110 levels can look like a bloody long time. It can look like the sort of stuff that could easily take you a year, because that literally could be in people's heads. Some people might come new to this game and think, that's going to take me a year. And some of them might be true. But of course, we would know if they played just like a couple of hours a day, it wouldn't take that long. I mean, it would take a couple of hours a day, probably a couple of months, but it wouldn't take a year. But no, people have no idea. So look what they said about RAF. If anything, we take that as a strong indication that the system needed to change. The best method to level a character in WoW shouldn't be buy a new copy of the game, put it on a separate account. send it a friend invite, level a new character, and then transfer that character from your primary account when you're finished. That's messy at best. Yes, it is. But that's not the reason why they've nerfed it. You know, if they want to stop that, they should stop you being able to transfer characters across accounts. That's the solution to that problem. So that's a not. Again, that's sometimes what gets me about Blizzard is they'll sometimes come up with explanations that just don't stand up to scrutiny. I mean, what they've said there is, you know, not the best method is buy a new copy. Blah, blah, blah. All of this jiggery pokery with buying a new copy of the game and using recruit a friend on it to level up a character quickly cannot work if at the end of it you can't transfer that character, because then that person is forced, if they want to keep that character, to pay for that second account. But that's not what they do. So just stop people being able to transfer characters across accounts, which only exists so that they can grab money. I know it's a convenience, and I've done it sometimes, but the reason it exists from Blizzard's point of view is because it makes them money. Changes in WoD and Legion with the story quest, but it was definitely a missing portion of the earlier game. Oh, what have I missed? Oh, it was browsing Reddit yesterday, and there was a question from a brand new player asking, how can I find out more about the main storyline? Where is the main quest? Then I realised he had a point in the base game. There's no main objective storyline or motive behind what you do. No, this is, well, you say it's a very zone-by-zone story-based. I wouldn't mind it if it was zone-by-zone story-based. I wouldn't mind that at all. What I mind is that there is a storyline running through it that just promptly ends. And what exists now in 1 to 60, because they did it in Cataclysm, the main storyline running through it is the rise of Deathwing again, or the return of Deathwing. And then you suddenly get to level 60, go to Outland. Okay, I'm not saying it's completely gone because Blade's Edge Mountains, but, you know, effectively that story fizzles out and you never see it again. It's a bit like there was a quest in Vanilla that did that, just one, the Diplomat. Now, we know that what that was about, it was basically a missing diplomat and you had to go on the trail of them. Now, what it was Varian being kidnapped, but you weren't told this in the quest. But the quest never got to Varian and rescuing him and Alka's Island. It just stopped. The quest just stopped. But that's, you know, that's what that long one does. I mean, I don't think there should just be one main storyline run through the game, but I think there should be one strong one. I think there should be one for each zone, and then you can pick on storylines you want. But as I say, it keeps intercutting with what appears to be a main storyline that never goes anywhere. Well, if they removed the... So you're saying you wouldn't have a problem with them making leveling take a bit longer if they removed the character boost service. Well, the problem then is the argument for it, which is potentially true, I'm not going to call them on this one, is that for new players, as I say, the new player experience is not great. The best chance Blizzard have of attracting new players is for current players to attract them in and go, you should play this game. So they come into the game, so, okay, can I play with you then? No, they can't. Because, I mean, they could if we had proper zone scaling, but we don't, so they can't. A level 1 player cannot play with a level 110 player. In Elder Scrolls Online, they could, but not, you know, in WoW. So they had to... So, and again, if people can't play with the friends, they might not play at all. It goes back to what I was saying. If my friend who got me into WoW had said he was Horde, well, that meant I couldn't play Paladin. I may not have played the game at all, or I may not have got into it like I did. I may have given it up quite quickly. So, yeah, they needed a way of getting that up to speed quickly. So I think that's why the character boost is there. Sasha, they should advertise it on the character creation screen. This game is 13 years old. Don't expect the most modern things. Isn't that tantamount to say this game's a bit shit? Are you sure you want to play it? I think that might be a bit of a marketing faux pas. Best idea I've seen so far regarding fixes to leveling was keep the mob difficulty and up the XP. Takes the same time, but you don't pull 3 or 4 of a zone and smoke it all instantly. I'd be okay with increasing the health of them if it increased the XP in proportion, certainly. I'd have preferred if they just did more damage, so you had to be a bit more cautious. Like, if the time taken to beat a mob wasn't just the time taken just to physically whack its head until it died, but to consider your strategy in dealing with it, I would prefer that. So playing with endgame guy, helping newbie, he gets practically nothing for that. Expects of it you can play together. Well, neither of them get anything out of it. Like, if I'm level 110 player and I have a friend and I persuade them to start playing, I can't quest with them as a level 1, because if I do, I just one-shot everything. They don't learn anything about the game. So, you know, there's no... It doesn't help either of us. I'm just wasting my time. And they're just following me. They might as well just watch the game being played on YouTube. So no one gets anything out of it. When do I think they'll bring out World of Warcraft 2, since this game has been around for so long? I don't know. I've talked about this before. I struggle to get in my head how to do it. Now, I'm not a big expert on MMOs in general, and there may be MMOs who have done this, but my issue is, like, if WoW sort of died out and then they developed a WoW 2, I could go, okay, that makes sense. Sort of. That's assuming they want to make another MMO. They may not. But then, and assuming, also assumes that if they did want to make another MMO, that it would be Warcraft based. It may not be Warcraft based. It may be, they've got other franchises they could make an MMO of. I sometimes wonder why they haven't made an MMO of one of their other franchises. Not that I'd be interested in it, but I do wonder why they haven't. But the issue for me is, so you can keep a project secret for a certain amount of time, but there comes a point where you have to announce it. You have to say, we're working on this. Now, what do you think most players of World of Warcraft are going to do if it's announced that World of Warcraft 2 is coming, say even in a couple of years' time? Because let's say they've done a couple of years' work on it, kept it secret, but now they've got to advertise it. Because you can't, you know, get right to the end without saying anything. I think a lot of those players would start to think, might not be much point in carrying on playing WoW. I might as well play other games for a bit and then come back when WoW 2 comes out. The other thing is, I worry how they'd get funding for it. I can imagine, like, a developer going to, like, the bosses, the people that are in charge of the money, saying, I want to do World of Warcraft 2. It's going to cost $200 million and it's going to take 4 years to do. At which point they say, is it going to make more money than World of Warcraft makes right now? To which the answer cannot possibly be yes. World of Warcraft makes a stonking amount of money, largely based on its legacy. A game like this wouldn't make this much money if it came out today. So you'd be trying, you know, a completely new MMO, or write it to have a ready-made player base, and you'd be, for the 2 years at least before it comes out, you'd be taking revenue because people would stop playing WoW. Not everyone, but some people would stop playing WoW because they'd be thinking, well, you're not going to keep both of them going. What's the point? You might as well move to the other. But I don't know. I don't know that that's how it would work. That's just what I would think. That's just how I have it in my head. So in Rift, you can mentor yourself down to a lower level to join a friend leveling in a lower zone, for example. Yeah, you could in Warhammer Online as well. Except I think that was the other way around, though. I think they apprenticed you, so you were boosted up. But either way, you could, like, play together. I mean, ultimately, I think of an MMO, there should be a system for allowing people of very different levels to play together. And to a certain extent, you might argue, at what point does levels become pointless? Well, I think largely they probably should be in an MMO. But either way, like, WoW's solution is just, I'll give them a level boost. But then again, that takes away from what they're saying here. when they're talking about their recruit a friend thing, they say it's not very satisfactory that you do a dungeon and suddenly get a load of abilities all at once. Well, if you do a level boost, you get all of your abilities at once and all of the talents you've got to choose. You'll be looking down these talents without a clue what they're talking about because they'll be referring to abilities you've not even heard of, even though they're in your spell book. I mean, that's what I didn't like about Death Knight's starting area, that you keep getting abilities too fast for anyone other than an experienced role-player game to cope with. So look at WoW's current engine. The same player mount models. Some of the old gear is extremely jagged on the new models. Some cloaks even interfere with weapons sheathed on the back on the new models. Things loosely polished. The engine is obviously creaking. Yes, it's old. There's no getting away from the fact that it's old. And I agree, it could absolutely do with a new version of World of Warcraft coming out. I just don't see how the transition would be adequately handled, given the amount of time it takes to develop and the amount of money it takes to develop an MMO. And then there's the potential Destiny 2 debacle, where it would take Blizz half a year after release to implement things that we came to know as baseline quality of life. Well, I don't know. I don't know anything about Destiny 2. I've not played it. I do feel, though, that their experience... Because remember, Destiny 2 isn't a Blizzard game, to be fair, is it? That's Activision's end of the thing. I do feel that Blizzard are experienced enough that they would probably have a good launch if it did go ahead, if this project did go ahead and got the funding. I would have little doubt that it would be a good launch as MMOs go. I feel like new MMOs in general are not something that would be a good investment in the current game industry. Well, that's what a lot of people feel, because, I mean, I think there's two sides to it. One is that there's clearly been a decline in the popularity of MMOs. I think that's largely undeniable. And the other thing is that there's so many that are managing on scraps, because it doesn't actually cost a lot of money just to keep one going. You don't need to make a large profit to keep it going. So I think the player base that do like MMOs are spread out too thin as well. I mean, I have subscriptions for 4, well, technically 5 accounts, because 2 of them I have 2 WoW accounts, and then I have one that, even though if I don't play it necessarily all the time, but I keep them running: Star Wars: The Old Republic, Elder Scrolls Online, and Lord of the Rings Online. And then I also have Black Desert Online, which costs no subscription for that, because that was just buy to play. But I don't play that at all at the moment. The PvP turned me right off that. With 4K gaming on consoles, would that impact WoW in the future on the PC? I'm afraid I have no real knowledge about like industry matters, I'm afraid. So I couldn't say. My technical ability is limited when it comes to things like that. I mean, I always think it's a bit mad that the average gaming PC is obviously capable of much more than a console. That's why it costs a lot more money. But not everyone plays games on gaming PCs. Some of them play it on potato PCs that are little better than a word processor. And so games always feel that they have to limit themselves in order to get accessibility. Whereas a console, they know exactly what the hardware is. They can build it for that hardware. So sometimes as a result, you can be forgiven for thinking that PCs are not capable of consoles. Hold on, what's this about Illidan? Illidan, you don't think is capable of killing Sargeras lore-wise? No, neither do I. Well, you say nobody's capable of that. I don't know. I don't know where the lore is now. It doesn't make sense. Like, in theory, he killed the Pantheon, and he did him against all the others. So in theory, that means Titans can be killed, so he can be killed. That being said, one thing that's pretty noticeable in Argus is that the Titans were very much alive. I don't know what happened there, really. I know there's a storyline, but it's not really an adequate explanation for me to how these Titans, which in Warcraft Chronicles Part 1 were dead, their spirits survived, attempted to assimilate with the Keepers on Azeroth, failed, and as far as I could tell, fizzled out. But no, they're alive and well. Alright, Agrimar wasn't that well to begin with, but alive and well on Argus. Also, noticeably smaller as well. Small enough in stature that they can fit into a room on Argus. So I don't know what's the deal is with Titans anymore. I am completely flummoxed. Old God's got to be the way to go. I'm absolutely certain. I was amazed that Old Gods was not the central theme of the next expansion. I still think it will feature in a tier, but I was amazed it wasn't a central theme. Because there's two things to it. First of all, if you're going to get rid of the Burning Legion, the Old Gods remains the main existential threat to Azeroth. And the second thing is, all that storyline with Illyria and the Void, that has to be obviously linked to the Void. So that was like laying the foundations for a bigger story further down the line, you felt. Because it had nothing to do with Argus. That Illyria and Void stuff has zero to do with the Argus storyline. Nothing to do with Legion. It's a completely separate storyline that has no business in it. So it's got to be laying the foundation for something later. Got to be. We're kind of sick if there was a raid where we went round on the literal Void Lord body, killing smaller things, which enable the Titans to kill it altogether because they would be the only people capable of doing so. Well, Titans can kill. I don't know about Void Lords. I'm not sure. Do I think BFA might be the final hurrah for the old faction war and the end may lead to the combine of resources against Void Lords? Wishful thinking. Yeah, I think it is wishful thinking. I mean, I'm known, obviously anyone who's been following for any time knows that I would much prefer it if there was no such thing as factions for PvE. For PvP, sure, have factions. But for PvE, it's just a barrier to people playing the game. It's a big barrier. Like, for example, like we've got the problem in our guild at the moment. So we already needed to replace a good Resto Druid. Now we've got to replace a Shadow Priest. And we're up against it because I'm in a guild that's 1, Alliance, 2, on a smallish realm, and 3, isn't exactly riding high in the world ranks, like, albeit Mythic raiding, but we're only on 9 out of 11. We've only just got to 9 out of 11. So we're really struggling. We're struggling. In fact, it'll be a bigger struggle than I had when I actually had to recruit in my last guild. I mean, one of the reasons I left is because I wasn't able to do that in Legion. Legion's just been a nightmare for recruiting. Should not forget we fought with Argus by using our OP weapons and help of Titans. As you can see, we'll not have millions of HP instead of that. Just few. Well, yeah, okay, scaling. I don't know. I mean, sure, we had the help of the Pantheon when we were killing Argus. We weren't just beating him up as we might ordinarily, granted. But I don't know what the official side of that is. Void Lords are a little different. Like, well, you can call them Void Gods if you like. Like, they're not old gods. Void Lords produce the old gods. And again, I don't know that we really know exactly what Void Lords are. Precisely. Just beings of the void that want to destroy the universe, ultimately. It is their aim to destroy the universe. They don't like it. It's all bad. They want to restart the Big Bang, if there is such a thing in the Warcraft universe. Void Gods are the most powerful type of Void creature yet encountered. They are gigantic and unlike Void Lords, wear no armour. The first encounter by adventurers in the Sunwell was born from a dying Naru named Muru. Some parts of the Naru's form are still visible. Second was born of the alternate timelines. So it's defining Void Gods as being the dying Naru then. In which case, fairly weak creatures, because even I beat them up. I think it's only sensible as sub-numbers drop. I assume they are dropping at least a little over time to do something about it. Not to mention it would fix faction imbalance immediately. Hang on, what am I missing? Oh, right. Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, any number of people I can imagine would sort of think they know what would increase numbers or at least halt any decline. We don't even know if there is a decline. But I don't know. Like, for something like that, I would want some market research. And they don't really conduct any as far as I can tell. Would I like to see another event like the AQ War effort? Again, with the connected realms, does that make as much sense? Also, I mean, all like the war effort might well be something, but I mean, it was different then because realms were all enclosed and you couldn't move from one to another. You had to just create a new character or another. So again, there was that sense of community there. So I don't think it would help foster anything particularly useful. And you certainly wouldn't want a single event like the opening of the gates. Because even though I'm sure the technology is better now, in fact I know it is, because obviously they had to, well, they have got new servers now, and they had to even update those with WoD launch, didn't they? I still don't think they'd like the idea of encouraging everyone to go to one place at one time. Although, well, actually, no, what we're talking about, they would just shard it, wouldn't they? So it would just all be sharded anyway. So no, I don't think the AQ War effort works in modern WoW. Why would you care about guys subbing just for a quarter of a year for LFR solo players instead of guys which are playing in guild together and do real stuff? Well, ideally what they would do, and I'm sure what they'd like to do, is to encourage those people who just sub for a quarter of a year to sub for the rest of the year. But again, I think it's just that thing of people who just do LFR. I mean, it's not seen as a stepping stone for a lot of people. It should be, you know, ideally there'd be some encouragement to do the other forms of it. But to be fair to Blizzard, even when they've tried to do that, it hasn't really worked. So I'm not even going to criticise them for it, because I can't think of how you encourage those people to do it. And remove an LFR I don't think is the answer, because then those players just wouldn't do anything. You know, if they're not going to go from LFR to normal, they're not going to go from nothing to normal. Still, you don't see any other MMO getting close to how popular WoW has been, and still is. We've got too many fantasy games out now. No, but there are, in terms of like in the modern thing, because it could be argued nothing, like no MMO at any rate will beat what WoW was, because what WoW was during the heyday of MMOs. And you could argue they created the heyday of MMOs. But compared with how it is now, I think Elder Scrolls Online is a rival. Again, I don't know how many concurrent players it has. I don't know how many concurrent players WoW has. But I think it could rival it. It's certainly seen as a big success. And I think with good reason. Villainous hierarchies get old after a while. I'm kind of tired of killing someone more important's proxy. Yeah, well, the other problem is that they seem to be afraid. This is why I didn't think they'd kill the Legion off as well Like, one thing is I just didn't think it was a good idea. But second, I just thought they seem to have this attitude that people only want to kill familiar villains. And we've basically run out of them. This is why, like in MoP, we had genuinely new lore. It was interesting. It was new. And I liked that. A lot of people didn't. In fact, I remember, you know, I've said this before probably. I remember a video that Preach did at the time saying, I don't care about these people. I don't know who these people are and I don't care about them. And I think that was the attitude a lot of people had. And it was completely the opposite attitude I had. It was like, because we don't know about them without doing the quests and learning about them, that's what made it so interesting. What I don't need is for them to keep bringing old villains back. But I think Blizzard took that as, oh, people don't like this new stuff. Let's just go back to Warcraft stuff. And that's where Warlords of Draenor came out. And it was like, right, let's jam every single, you know, character that's ever been in the Warcraft series into one expansion. You still think ESO population is made of like 90% plus solo players, but that's potentially MMOs in general. I think that's just MMOs now. That's why there has to be solo content. It's just that I think people should be incentivized to do group stuff. But ultimately, I think you also have to be realistic. A lot of players are playing it solo. I'm playing it solo. And a lot of players are playing WoW solo, or effectively solo. Yes, you can do LFR, but is that any different to solo content? Not really. Because you don't have to... Anything where you don't have to communicate with another person, I'm not going to consider to be group play. Even though, of course, you need a group to do LFR. But it's not one you have to communicate with. You could imagine that just NPCs who occasionally tell you how shit you are in raid chat. That, you know, literally... You have no idea that there's any human beings at the end of these fools. I think the mechanism behind MoP and how it worked was great. Just not sure if trying to jump on the Kung Fu Panda bandwagon was the best way to go about it. Well, that is something... I mean, I know someone said that to me in the past when I've talked about the fact, you know, people just didn't seem to like MoP because of the fact that it was just new lore. And some people said, well, maybe it was just the Pandaren thing that put people off. It may have been, but I thought it was a really good. I don't know. I personally thought it was a really good expansion. At the time, I thought it was the best expansion that had come out to date, and that includes Burning Crusade. You know, I just thought it was better. I think Legion is better still, for all my moaning about certain aspects of it. But you know, MoP at the time, MoP I thought was the best expansion. If WoW 2 was a... Well, it wouldn't be called WoW 2, of course, then if it was a single-player game. It would be... I mean, they could do a single-player Warcraft game, couldn't they? There's nothing to stop that. Because obviously, they're surely going to carry on the Warcraft franchise. Now, it doesn't have to be an MMO. I mean, they started off as RTSs. And then you've got an MMO. Hearthstone, I suppose Hearthstone is still the Warcraft franchise. So you've got... you know, an electronic trading card game there. There could be another continuation of the Warcraft franchise that took the place of a single player. I'm not sure that I think they would, though, because it would be the first time it's been so hero-centric, given that Warcraft 1, 2 and 3 being RTSs were still multiplayer games, and the characters were still like mini, well, not quite armies, but battalions and stuff like that. World of Warcraft, again, is the idea that each player is one of that battalion, but it's still large groups together. So Warcraft is basically about large bodies of things. So to have a single player version, probably not, but it is possible. Anything's possible. I mean, ultimately, the thing that would sway it is not does it make sense, but will it make money? Ultimately, that's what's got to happen. Warcraft 4, I don't see, just as MMOs are not necessarily as big a seller as they were, I definitely don't think RTS games are going to make a comeback without something very, very different and innovative being done to them. What do you think raiding guilds, especially Heroic and Mythic, are struggling Really struggling for regular members. Has the WoW player base changed so much from the raiding heydays? No, I just think there's just loads of guilds. I think raiding, in fact, I know raiding has become more popular, and I mean organised raiding, that is, not just LFR. I know it's become more popular in Legion. Every way you try and look at it, it's clear. There are more people log in, and I asked here at the start, is that just because more people are logging or more people are raiding? It's because more people are raiding. You can look at a number of players that have got achievements and stuff like that for raiding, proper raiding, not LFR. There are more people raiding. There are more raid guilds. So I think it's just spread too thin. I think there are just too many. I said this at Nighthold. I think there's just too many guilds for the number of players that there are. Whereas it used to be the case that there were, you know, I don't know. I just feel that there's just lots and lots of guilds doing stuff. Plus the fact that when they knocked it down from, you know, down to 20 man, I mean, maybe if they'd have kept it at 25 man, that would have made it, it's a bit more difficult to manage a roster a bit bigger, and it would have disincentivized people from making new guilds that couldn't afford. I don't know. It's just really weird. But there's definitely more people raiding, but it is much more difficult to recruit. So the only conclusion I can come to is just more raids, more raid guilds. But I don't have a lot of firm data on that. It's just inference. They started playing in MOP. Okay. So you got to enjoy all that quest and understanding the lore there. I just think they could do it with a more intense theme behind it. Not pandas, maybe ethereals. Well, ethereals are really... Well, they are mysterious. The problem is that if you do a storyline based on them, you'd have to learn things about them. And I think the whole point of them is you're not supposed to learn anything about them. Apart from the fact they like making money. They're like mysterious goblins. So, Kisasha, the guilds you've been in have all have the same or more players online now since raiding is flexible. I mean, there's definitely more people raiding. Like, introducing, I know it wasn't Legion that introduced it, but, you know, it has kicked on in Legion. The group finder has helped. I mean, people can literally now do normal. It's quite funny because you'll see, won't you, when a raid first comes out, and you'll see the streamers, the big streamers, who'll do a viewer-based raid to normal, and at the end of it go, well done guys, we've done normal, isn't it? It's fantastic. And it's just like, yeah, because that's normal. And you can just blunder your way through normal. So there is that, but it's still organised. You can't do it without talking to each other. So you still need some communication in normal. It's not like LFR easy. It's just, you can just go through it. You will just go through it. As long as you've got someone calling the shots. That's all you basically need. And for people to obviously listen to them. To be honest, everyone has some... Hold on, it's disappeared. Sort of emotional connection to the ethereals. 1%... Oh my god, where's the chat going? 1% love ethereals because of 920 Arcanos. I still only got a 910. I don't love them until I have a 920. Or preferably a 985. I would love to get a 985. The other 99% hate them because 920 Arcanos. Well, I think there's probably more than 1% have an Arcana crystal of suitable item level. Although for the 920 it may indeed only be 1%, if that. The new solo survival RTS... Oh, I don't know. I would be surprised if they did another RTS based on Warcraft at any rate. But I don't know what's in there. They must have plans. I just don't know what those plans are. When new raids come out, we get all these people who log in once every couple of weeks who decide they want to come. Then after a few weeks, the excitement's gone and they don't come back until the next tier. There are some people like that. That's why, of course, they stagger LFR to try and stop that. It's like, okay, you want to do LFR, do you? Well, you'll need to subscribe for at least 2 months. That, I think, is their plan there. because they bring out, what is it, like 4 wings, spaced 2 weeks apart. So it's making you basically be on for 2 months. Is Arcano Crystal the best in slot trinket for rate even at 910? No, it's not the best at 910. I mean, I don't use it for raids at the moment because I have a 960 Memento. I have a 945 Seeping Scourge Wing, which is... It's only a bit better than a 910 Arcano, but it is better. For pure single target, that is. I have a few other things as well. But a 930 would be very close to being BIS. So if it was like a 930 Arcano, would be pretty close. And if you really looked out and got a 985, wow. Wow. I strongly suspect no one in the world has that, otherwise I'd have seen a screenshot. Either that, or do you know, sometimes what I like to think is that there is someone in the world who has a 985 Arcana Crystal, but they're just a very casual new player who doesn't understand the value of it. They've slotted it because, you know, it's 985, it's their best item level, but they don't actually appreciate the power of it. So they've never taken a screenshot and put it on Reddit. I like to think that's happened. 970 socketed injector. Ugh. If you can't manage to have a stable roster for Mythic, what do you do? Have an unstable roster for Mythic. I mean, ultimately, you end up progressing more slowly, which gets you further behind, which makes it even more difficult to recruit. That is the slippery slope that, you know, that I've been on in a couple of guilds now for all of Legion. Or most of Legion, or you have to call odd nights. That, again, encourages people to look elsewhere, because as soon as you have to call a raid, then there will be people going, oh dear, we're on the way out here, even though that may not be true. But it will not inspire confidence. And again, you get further behind because you've lost a night. So everything acts against you. As I say, I wouldn't mind. There's something really curious about raiders, like as recruits. If there was a sliding scale of quality of raider, what it should be the case, what it always used to be the case before. So at the moment we're looking for a Resto Druid and we're looking for a Shadow Priest. So what it should be the case is we go out looking for a Resto Druid and Shadow Priest. We take our time to evaluate those who might want to join us, and then after a week or so, we basically pick whoever seemed best. You know, and we take those. The problem now is that it doesn't work like that. You don't have a sliding scale. You have people who are good enough, and if there aren't enough of them for you to grab one, and below them there are the people that are actually not good enough to do mythic mechanics, and you sometimes get into that situation. So you can sometimes be looking for a particular class and spec for months because no one comes onto the market that you can attract with your much lower world rank. Hi, Glaze. And then again, as I say, we've got two other things working against us. One, a lot of people really don't like going to a low pop realm, which I've never understood. I don't think it's actually low, but it's certainly not. It's not even medium. I don't know what it is. But anyway, the realm itself is not going to attract players. For some reason, people like long queues and stuff, and loads of people ganking them. And then the other issue is that we're Alliance. And I have very real fears for Alliance raiding next expansion. Because if anything, Blizzard, I think, are making it worse, the faction imbalance. They're certainly not of the opinion that there's a problem, which is dangerous enough. Yeah, raid bots is absolutely how you would sim yourself. I really wouldn't like to have to go Horde. I mean, I would if I had to. But, you know, as soon as I went Horde, like at the end of WoD, I went Horde. And I'm not saying I regretted it. It was a nice guild, but I didn't like it. First thing I did was into my garrison. You know, I looked at my garrison. I just thought, this is just a giant snowball. And I have no idea which building is which. They all look the same. I had to actually go down and take a closer look to see which bloody building was which. I can't be an undead paladin. No, I don't like the mud huts. Their buildings are deathly boring. You know, it basically offends me as well, because the Alliance are very much medieval in terms of their scope, and they're fighting against a faction that is effectively barely hunter-gatherer, and somehow we're evenly matched. I've never understood that one. The Alliance build. How can you find Alliance buildings boring when the alternative is 6 sticks in the ground with some skins wrapped around it? But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's boring. Boring buildings and ugly races. And I remind you of what, you know, the man himself has said. Human. His first word. Human. Retribution. Paladin. That's what he'd like to play. That's his WoW character of choice. Oh, the spikes, yes. Should anyone actually think... I don't know what the spikes are even about. I mean, is that for burglars? Is there anyone stupid enough to think there might be something valuable in the mud huts? What? I don't know what the spikes are for. How Warcraft is more popular than Star Wars when it comes to MMOs. Well, that's because it was created by a dedicated games company. Whereas Star Wars, you know, trades on a franchise, but ultimately did not have the same affection and skill going into making it into a game. I mean, I do think Star Wars: The Old Republic is a good game from a single-player point of view. I described it in that video recently as a very good single-player game. If you go in with that attitude, it's really good. But it's not a great MMO, I think it's fair to say. Well, you can still fly over Stormwind as Horde. It's just you won't be very welcome to land. But yeah, I mean, whether something... Obviously, a successful MMO, it helps if it can trade on a previous franchise for something, because then you've got a ready-made fan base. So it would be difficult to imagine someone creating an MMO that didn't have... I mean, it has happened. Wildstar, I guess, was one example, but that didn't really last very long. And people may argue about the reasons for that, but it's very rare you get a big budget MMO that isn't trading on an existing fan base. Because, again, I think it's the same reason why people come up with rubbish films. We were talking about this last week, weren't we, with Star Wars films. People come up with crap ideas for Star Wars films. I'm not just talking about Episode 8. Because executives don't like to risk. They want something that's a guaranteed moneymaker. And the same thing with MMOs. You base it on an existing franchise for which there is a dedicated player base. And you will make money. You may not make loads of money if you make a crap version of it. So yeah, WoW, ESO, Star Wars: The Old Republic, Final Fantasy 14, Lord of the Rings Online, Warhammer Online, even though obviously that only lasted like 5 years and they kicked it in the head. But then again, Warhammer Online was a classic example of the game. The ability to deliver was out of the league of those developers. Those developers were not new to gaming because they'd ones who created Dark Age of Camelot, weren't they? And some of the PvP features were really good, but ultimately they were not able to deliver a quality product, even though their ideas were good. As a result, it failed, but it had a ready-made player base because Warhammer players. I mean, so for the fan base, part of your initial interest was playing because of Warcraft 2 and 3 would be with a lot of people. Age of Conan, yeah. I can't think of you do get MMOs come up that are completely unique and not based on anything, but they tend not to really get much hype about them. I mean, everyone's at the moment hyping Ashes of Creation, and I've bought into it myself. So at some point, no, not soon, I expect, but at some point, I will get my beta invite into that. But even though, because I looked at it, was interesting enough to give it a go. But I can also see it being one of those games that has a load of hype. People think, oh, the great indie game comes out, and then 6 months later it's forgotten. Ah, well, I've never heard of Runes of Magic. So unfortunately, that may be a case in point. So I think when the classic WoW servers come out, I think I said I would create a character again. I would create my paladin again, I think, to be honest. But I wouldn't be playing on it all the time. I would treat it as one of those games I play every now and then. Because it would just be there for nostalgia. I mean, I played all aspects of it. I don't think there was anything I didn't do. Well, okay, all right. I didn't finish Nax. But I wouldn't be aiming to do that when I went back to it anyway. Not that I would object to the potential to try and get a corrupted Ashbringer. That is one minor regret I have, that from TBC that I didn't organise groups and try and get my corrupted Ashbringer during TBC when you could still do Nax. I certainly don't think that they should charge extra for Classic WoW. I'll be honest, I would quite like to see them just offer it for a nominal buy-to-play game. Like, I don't know, $10 or something, and then it's just there. But if they are going to charge a subscription for it, which I don't think would be a good idea, then it has to be something that's baked into the WoW subscription. I think it should be less than the WoW subscription if you only want Classic. Again, the whole point is, from their point of view, Blizzard didn't want to do it, remember? They said they didn't want to do it. So they're agreeing to do it because it can only be to try and crush the private servers. And they're not going to do that if it is costly. Because no matter what a lot of people say, there's plenty of people play on the Classic servers because it's free. Plus, of course, you can well imagine Blizzard trying, because I can see them putting it as a subscription, but a smaller one, and then trying to sort of say to players a bit lower down, well, for only a little bit extra per month, you could actually get access to the live version of World of Warcraft and try and get them in that way. Yes, Mahal, I think they are doing it effectively to protect their intellectual property. As a more, potentially they've come up with it as being a more cost-effective way, cheaper than going through the courts all the time. Not that they've had to go through any courts, because ultimately people have backed down when threatened. One thing you would seriously consider moving away from the current tech spec would be progression servers, going from vanilla BC Wrath. Yeah, see, I mean, I think, see, I can understand Blizzard's reluctance to bring Classic WoW back, because there would be a whole can of worms kicked open as a result of it. Like, you bring it out to great fanfare, people love it. And again, that's assuming you've struck the balance right about which patch you set it at. You know, what is actually in the game. But then you have to say, okay, so at what rate do you release content? And then after a couple of years and it's done a cycle, assuming you set it on a 2-year cycle, then what? Are people going to start calling for Burning Crusade servers? Do you do that? Or do you resist doing that? You know, so it's a proper Pandora's box. Yeah, the whole concept of Classic WoW. I'm glad they're doing it, you know, because I can understand players who really want to play it, because if it was a traditional game, you'd have a copy of it. You'd have a hard copy of it, like I do with Baldur's Gate. And I can play that whenever I like. But you can't do that with an online game, because you play on their servers. So when it changes, you've got to, your game has changed. So I understand people wanting the original. So it's really, but it's just very messy. It has the potential to be hugely messy, in fact. Because as soon as they start announcing definites, not at the moment they're like gauging opinion. As soon as they make a decision, they're going to infuriate people. There's going to be a section of that community that are not going to be happy. And if there's one thing that the classic WoW community are good at, is complaining. That's not everyone, of course, but there's a vocal number who are pretty good at complaining, and they will. Classic WoW with a shared or separate sub is win-win, because they're still making sub money whether someone plays live or classic. Yes, potentially, if people will pay it, because again they have to work out how much are people going to be willing to pay for this. And again, I don't think they're going to do it as a money-making thing. I think they just aim to break even, which is why they could easily afford to do it for free, effectively. $10 for the game, and then it's yours. There's an MMO closing down soon that's going to continue on Steam as a solo MMO. Is there? Is this an MMO that I've not heard of? Probably is. I've not heard of most of them. Just waiting for them to have everything available from the get-go. And when people are done with Nax in 6 months, some people will demand new content. Well, they'll have new content. It'll be like, oh, you want new content, do you? Well, have you tried Battle for Azeroth? Will I be playing a lot of Classic WoW? Not a lot, no. I will be playing it, but on a very casual basis. Do I think they should tune Ret Pilot to be viable raid spec in Villa? No. Classic is classic. They've said that. That's not to say that you couldn't play Ret in raids. You could actually do, you could do a lot of damage when you really had to. Like Loatheb, I may have talked about this before, was a massive, it was a DPS check amongst DPS checks. There has never been a boss like this for a DPS check in the game ever. I mean, people keep talking about Patchwork. That's only because Patchwork had no basic mechanics. Loatheb had mechanics, but it was a massive DPS check. Except for Death and Taxes, who 5-manned it, using some Warlocks, a Shadow Priest, and a Protection Warrior. But that was just cheesing it. But in terms of most 5-man guilds, which meant everyone had to DPS. Which meant I got to DPS. Because you couldn't heal. Like, you could cast one heal every 2 minutes, I think it was. Because you got a debuff on you every time you cast a heal, which meant you couldn't cast any more heals of any kind for like 2 minutes. So the only person in the raid who could get a heal was the tank, and you had to have a rotation, and this was without add-ons helping you do it as well. The way we had to do it is you had a set rotation, a cycle, and you had to, and if anyone panicked, you'd be screwed. Because what you had to do is, the person before you in the cycle, they would cast their heal and there'd be an automatic whisper macro. They'd make up a macro, so it whispered you that you're next. And you had to count like 5 seconds and then it'd be your turn. So you'd get the whisper, you'd go 1, Mississippi. In fact, I always do the 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi. Cast my heal. And then I would whisper the next person. So if anyone went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bang, like that, you'd get to the end of the cycle and then the first person wouldn't be ready yet, and then the tank would die. So you had to actually be calm and collected. But the bottom line is, I cast about 2 heals in the entire fight. And one of them was lay on hands. So I used to get an innovate. So it was all set up for me to basically go full on DPS, which is what I did. And I dosed myself up to the eyeballs, where you could wear multiple, you could have multiple flasks. You know, you had a maximum number of buff things, but you could basically load yourself up with flasks and elixirs and all sorts. And I went full on DPS, and I actually came top of damage on that fight. The main reason why Rets generally couldn't do much damage is because you couldn't do anything well and still keep 40 people buffed every 5 minutes. But by the time Nax came out, then you had greater blessings. So then that was much more manageable, and that was okay then. It's just that the perception had already set in that you can't use Rets for DPS. Like, you can't use Paladins for DPS. And that's how it remained until TBC. And even then, most people didn't cotton on until, like, Black Temple. By which time, ironically, Rets were weaker. Rets were actually really bloody strong in Tier 4, I thought. But anyway, yeah. Sorry, I'm missing stuff. Wonder if they'll lock vanilla to regions or make cross-region servers. No, they'll lock it to regions. You know they will. They haven't even opened... Like, you can understand locking it to regions in the game because of latency. They don't... There's no excuse for them locking forums to regions, but they do that. Oh, yes, I've heard about Rift Prime. I saw a video about that. I've forgotten who did it now. I think it might have been Fever. But I never really played Rift. I never really tried it. Why does Blizzard refuse to add additional Ret utility in live? Well, I don't know. So, well, they argue that we've got loads of utility. But anyway. Rift originally launched as a subscription MMO, blah, blah, blah. Then added buy-to-play expansions, is now returned to the subscription, yeah. Oh yeah, I still haven't done that video on what my ideas for ranged melee classes would be. Oh, everything was a WoW killer. Every game that came out was a WoW killer. The first WoW killer I ever played was Age of Conan. I played it for a month, and that was it. It was actually a really good game. The like Tortage, the island where you started, I thought it was a great game. I loved it. And then I got off the island and out into the world, and it was just overwhelming. There was like nothing I could get a handle on. It was just like stuff everywhere. And I would go to a place and pick up a load of quests, and then try and go and do the quest, and find myself getting lost and getting everything else. There were many boobies in it, yes. And I just went off it completely because I had no idea what I was doing. It was just, you know, I know I go on about exploration. Exploration's nice, but I want a map. I want something to get a handle on where I am and where I'm going. And there was none of that. So, yeah, I just gave it up. Although, ironically, I did want to come back a bit later and play it again. But I couldn't find my account details. And there was, because I'd got the thingy edition with the special features in it, there was no way I was just going to create a new account. Sod that. I wanted my account back. And I couldn't I couldn't get through to the customer service or anything. I don't know. So the company were basically useless. So they missed out on more money. So I just let it die. I did like the character I had, though. I can't remember what it was called. But that was like a melee mage. Because you like cast stuff, but in melee with a big sword. I quite like that character. I must try Rift at some point this year on a break. I don't get breaks. Even when I get a break from work, I have other things. I've got other games. Like, and I don't even want to risk playing a game that I might like. Because I have no time. Until I win the lottery and can just basically do what I want all day. I basically don't get breaks. I just do when I'm off for college, outside of term time, I just do other things. And this is why I have to make plans. This is where I went wrong last summer. I completely cocked up last summer because I made plans and then I threw them in the bin and made different plans. But the different plans were in my head instead of on paper. And the problem with that is you can think to yourself in your head, oh yeah, I can do that, that and that and that. But then you realise, if you'd done it on paper, you would realise that you haven't got time to do it all. So you needed to prioritise. But in your head, you don't. So, or I didn't. So, lesson learned. I'll not do that this summer. But even this half term, I have various things I want to get done. I know I can't do them all. Yeah. Oh, what was the other one that was supposed to be a WoW killer? Was it Aeon or something? That Korean game. I didn't play that. That sounded absolutely appalling. In terms of the sheer amount of grind it sounded like it had in for me. No, well, I have played Black Desert. I quite like Black Desert Online. If it weren't for the non-consensual PvP, I would have carried on playing Black Desert Online, at least on a casual basis. I like the game. I don't like the fact that my characters are about to get to a level where people could just ruffle stomp me all the time. And there isn't, like, people, you know, they say in the game, oh, well, there's this thing to dissuade people from doing it. There isn't. There's a system whereby if the same person keeps butchering you, then all right, there's something to dissuade them from doing that. But there's nothing to dissuade someone coming along and smashing your face in, then someone else coming along and smashing your face in, then someone else coming along and smashing your face in, and an orderly queue forming behind your corpse to smash your face in. So, but the PvE aspects of the game, solo aspects of the game, let's be honest, I thought were fun. I liked that. It's good. Oh yes, it was very exciting, dynamic fight style as well, yes. I liked that game. But as I say, I was going to get to a particular level where, and it was coming soon, and I thought, no, I'm not in that. I do not like being forced to PvP. And when I say forced to PvP, I basically mean getting repeatedly smashed in the face. Kingdoms of Amalur. Not heard of that either. I think I only hear of, like, famous ones. Which is possibly what colours my perception of big MMOs needing that ready-made fan base, because that's the only time I ever hear of them. I mean, Black Desert Online, of course, had already been existing for quite some time in Korea, and there were people playing it on the Korean servers, presumably having very little idea what was going on. I can only imagine. Speaking of PvP, how much do you think they need to add to leveling while flagged for PvP to make it worth it? I don't know. Wouldn't it be better if Battlegrounds just gave you a decent amount of XP instead? Just to encourage people to go into Battlegrounds if they wanted to level that way. Black Desert Online is pretty dead. EU and NA? Is it? I don't know. I mean, I know they still keep introducing new aspects of it, you know, from the Korean version. But I've no idea how it's doing, like, commercially. But it doesn't surprise me, as I say. I don't know why they have... I don't know why games insist on this form of PvP that can only possibly appeal to people who are no good at the game and just want to shit on people who don't have such good gear as them. Well, Star Wars: The Old Republic is not the only one that has separate areas. Most MMOs have separate areas. Like, almost all of them, that I have played anyway, have separate areas. Warhammer Online had separate areas, and that was a PvP game. That has separate areas. ESO has separate areas. Lord of the Rings Online. You know, Star Wars The Old Republic, like you say there. They all do. Well, most of them do. Battlegrounds. I need to get rid of the templates. You miss one-shotting people. No need to one-shot people. It's not fun being one-shot. But wouldn't it be better if they removed PvP and told people to play League of Legends instead? No, they should just do good PvP. Do good PvP. PvP, like Elder Scrolls Online, a massive zone, like huge. And you go there to do your PvP. Put stuff in it that is going to be of interest to people. So give people a reason to go there. Even if there's no other players there, there's still stuff you can do. Loads of objectives, loads of stuff to do. It's almost like a game within a game in a massive area. And that's where people go to PvP. And there's no PvP in the PvE areas. The rest of the world, PvP free. That would be better. It would also have been better if they'd have had 3 factions, because 2-faction PvP in an open world situation never works, because you will always get an imbalance, and that imbalance will then always be made worse because no one who's interested in PvP is going to join the weaker faction. The WoW PvP stat templates were made by people with no understanding of the specs. I don't know. I have no real comment on PvP personally, because I don't really play it. Yeah, my idea of PvP is defending myself against the fool who has 1/3 of my health who thought they could kill me. Not fun being one-shot, but never forgetting Wrath of the Lich King. A Paladin with a Zerka buff and Shadowmourne, an elite PvP set one-shot me. At that moment, it made me want to get that elite set in your druid and be that guy. Having to do battlegrounds for essences last week. Oh, well, I don't think we've had to do it. Well, I haven't done it anyway. I mean, if you just had to do a battleground for it, then I might think, well, actually, no, that's a lie, because I haven't even done a heroic dungeon, and that awards it as well. But in theory, I might. But the fact that you've got to win as well. Ugh. So you've got people in there that never PvP. Well, that's the thing. Like, here's the thing, again, about mixing PvE and PvP. If you put a feature in the game that encourages PvE players to play PvP, you're obviously going to pollute it with a load of people who don't know what they're doing, which only makes the people who do know what they're doing or think they know what they're doing angrier. Again, I don't understand that. It was a bit like in MOP where they had the legendary quest line. Part of the legendary quest line was you had to win a couple of battlegrounds. Like there was the new ones. There was the Silver Shards Mines and that Temple of Doofa. And, you know, I resented having to do it. In actual fact, when I got my arse into it and I one Saturday just went in, I actually only needed to do a few to win. It didn't actually take that long, but it could have done. But also I can imagine PvP players there. There's me all of a sudden going in there, no idea what to do. I'm just going, I'm here to get more legendary ring, aren't I? That can't impress the PvP players. It would be just like if our raid leader one day, we're going into Mythic Progress, so the next boss we're on hopefully is Agrimar, and he brings his cousin along. Oh, by the way, this guy's going to be joining us for tonight's progress. He's never done any PvE. He's a PvP player. He's never raided before. That's all right, isn't it? No, piss off. But yes. The reputation page on character screen is full of factions. Why not allow you to represent these factions even as a Horde or ally player? Well, that's what I was arguing before. From a storyline point of view, there is no reason to have Horde and Alliance as a strict racial thing, because there are any number of organisations whose members consist of Horde and Alliance characters, NPCs, And it's not just that you've got organisations with mixtures of orcs and humans. Those orcs are still members of the Horde. Like the Earthen Ring, for example. Thrall is a member of the Earthen Ring. He's the former leader of the Horde. He's still a member of the Horde. He identifies as a member of the Horde. But he's still very polite to Night Elf Druids, who also identify equally strongly as Alliance. So story-wise, there is no issue whatsoever with completely blurring the lines for PvE and retaining factions for PvP. Now, for Battlegrounds, of course, you wouldn't mix it. You'd have to be. Like, you could be in a guild, for example, with a mixture of Horde and Alliance racers, and you go to a Battleground, and it'd be like, okay, I'm making a Battleground group who wants to join. The Orc players wouldn't be able to join the human players. That wouldn't be allowed, because PvP factions, yes. So you'd be on opposite sides when it came to PvP. But the same side when it came to PvE, just join whichever guild you want, whatever the hell. I mean, if some guilds, like I said before, when people were moaning, no, I don't want that. Some guilds could just choose to only accept traditional Alliance races or traditional Horde races. That's down to them. That's like, I saw a guild in Vanilla that was a Night Elf guild. You were only allowed to be a Night Elf in that guild. You weren't allowed any characters in that guild that weren't Night Elves. And they raided as well. Not very successfully, but they still raided. Because they could cover all the basic stuff they needed. You know, you could cover enough of the classes at any rate. Just to mention a comment you made about guilds of faction. You can be in the same guild cross-faction in Rift. You can in Elder Scrolls Online. And in Lord of the Rings Online, of course, there's no such thing as factions in PvE. In fact, to PvP, you can either use your character or you create like a monster character, which is like a follower of Sauron. So, you know, again, I've played MMOs. Even though I've not played Rift, I've played MMOs where you have zero restrictions on joining guilds and PvE stuff based on which faction you're ostensibly part of. A Paladin and Druid own guild that have raided Mythic. Well, you could, yes. These days you could do that. Back in Vanilla you wouldn't be able to because you couldn't play all the roles effectively as a single class. But as a single race you could. Obviously not Gnome, because Gnomes didn't have healers. So there was zero chance of having an all-Gnome guild. Blizzard knew how to keep them in line back then. It was bad enough you could be a Gnome warrior, because that meant Gnome tanks. Which I was, you know, had unleashed upon me in TBC. It was not pleasant. Like, before TBC, I was just mildly annoyed with gnomes. But in TBC, just I got PTSD, basically. From a gnome tank. Main tank in our raid guild. Goblins, I don't mind goblins. Goblins are nice. Like, it's a little known fact that Alliance was supposed to have goblins in like World of Warcraft, and it was changed to gnomes at the last minute. Any other MMO you play that has flying? Not that I play. Doesn't no, Final Fantasy doesn't, does it? Does it? But certainly none that I play have. And I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, you can tell the current... Obviously, Blizzard wanted to ban it completely in WoD. They wanted to just finish it. Because it's not a good idea. But the problem was the genie was out of the bottle. Well, who has time for MMOs if you play WoW? Well, this is the thing, you see. Like, over Christmas, I was playing Star Wars The Old Republic. I've not been able to play very much of it since Christmas because... when it's back to term time, too much to do in WoW. Whereas when it comes to half term, I'll have time to play again. I mean, I would love to be able to set aside some time to just play one of those other games. But I don't always have that time. which is a bit of a shame. Even just like 4 or 5 hours a week on them. But you can't do that. Not with a full-time job and doing other stuff as well like this. So yeah, I have to wait for holidays to be able to play them. Ultimately. Is it realistic to expect Blizz to keep the content coming at a similar rate for the duration of BFA? Not, well, obviously they can't be releasing content like this all the way up to BFA because the last piece of well, obviously I know, yeah, a month before it there will be the pre-expansion content. That's a different thing. But in terms of Legion content, they can't bring out the last bit of content just before BFA because then there's not enough time for people to do it. So the content will have to be increasingly casual as it gets towards the end. But in the here and now, they can't start just bringing out casual content with a year to go. So that's... But I don't know what their plans are for 2018, obviously. But they can't... They have to bring out some more challenging content before summer at least to tide us over. And then after summer, then they can just be bringing out casual stuff with the hope that Battle for Azeroth is able to release by the end of the year or at the very worst, early next year. No, he specifically said no Ruby Sanctum. He was asked the direct question quite a while ago now. I'm still a bit surprised they haven't actually elaborated on it. But the Fat Boss, one of the Fat Boss brothers, asked the direct question, is there going to be a raid after Antorus? And the response was, Antorus is the last tier raid of Legion, and there isn't going to be a Ruby Sanctum type raid either. Which obviously leaves everything in between available. So... That's that. But if you're bored at work and need more content, well, if you mean more my content, we'll have to hope that Blizzard get me into the beta quick. Even though, if like, let's say I got into the beta to start with, I wouldn't necessarily expect a lot because it won't work. It'll be unstable as hell to begin with. But at least it will be something to comment on. Whereas if I'm not in, I just have to be peering in through the window of other people playing it and just comment on that, which is not as good. Because I mean, I could ask people to do things for me and find things out, but it would hardly be keeping up to date. It would always be old news. But yes, I am curious to hear, as I say, if there is, and I don't know where people have got this idea that there is a big announcement this Friday. There might be. People seem to think, I don't know what, but there's so many people keep saying it, but I don't know where it's come from. I can't see that it's come from Blizzard. Emerald Knight Sanctum. I mean, see, I don't really know what happened with that because we had that Emerald Nightmare thing, obviously, at the start of Legion. Seems to have disappeared. Maybe it will. Maybe there'll be another Emerald Nightmare type bit of content to come. Again, all old godsy related stuff. Maybe the 77 days rule was too low. We might need 120 plus for more content. Well, that original 11-week thing was obviously not going to last as soon as BlizzCon came around, because BlizzCon will immediately lose you 2 weeks of developer time because they spend a week getting ready for it and another week curing their hangovers. Christmas was always going to get in the way of it. So straight away, adding on a month. And then obviously the problems of patch 7.3.5, which granted are largely software engineer problems as opposed to games developer problems, but still, that is also going to take out time that they had on other things. So I think that's out the window. Well, it is out the window now. It's definitely out the window now. But I think it was always going to be regardless. But yeah, I hope that what they're actually, even though I want them to announce that beta's opening, and I want them to announce that I'm in it. Actually, well, they don't really, I don't think they send you anything. I think what they do is they just make it appear on your Battle.net. So where I've got my 2 live accounts and my Starter Edition account on the NA forums, where servers where I went just, I don't know what for. And the PTR choice, there should just be another choice that says Battle for Azeroth Beta or Alpha. I don't care which. But I also hope that they, I mean, I expected them to announce that they were going to do a Q&A this week, actually. I was expecting a Q&A this Thursday. Because a patch has come out, a content patch has come out. They usually then schedule a Q&A to talk about it and what's coming up next. And they tend to do those on Thursdays. And there hasn't been any such announcement. And I wonder if that is just because of the patch 7.3.5 problems. Oh, okay, here's some feedback. Is this what people were talking about? Let's have a look. Refer a friend system is intended as an option for players who want to invite a friend to play WoW with them, blah, 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 blah. Nowadays, purchasing the latest WoW expansion includes a free character boost. Yes, this is what you were talking about, isn't it? Yeah. Q&A where they don't pick questions that... Well, they... To be fair, no, I think they do answer questions that you want answering, but obviously they do pick them. Because I never really understand why they do it live, if I'm honest. Because unless they just see Twitch as being a better platform than YouTube. Because they don't actually respond to any of the comments live. Now, obviously, they wouldn't be able to read them all live because there's too many people. I mean, if you look at one, you see that you're just the flurry of comments that come and go really quickly. And that's with them knowing that no one's reading them. Imagine what it'd be like if they thought that Blizzard were reading them. You are late to the review, sorry, yes. Did we already complain about the new levelling? Yes. Well, we sort of did. No, we complained about the recruiter friend, I think. But yeah, I think we complained about the leveling last week. I mean, I will try it out for myself. It's, you know, at least like when the half term comes around, I'm at least going to be doing it then. I may get a chance to do it a bit earlier, but we'll have to see on that one. You think the new leveling could use some tweaks, but general premise is good. I mean, zone scaling is definitely good, and it's an improvement on what there was for most people. But for me, you know, I can't help just keep saying that I just think it's a missed opportunity for a number of reasons. And certainly it doesn't want to be slowing down leveling. I mean, I do think people who used to level just by doing dungeons should probably adapt. I'm not going to have too much sympathy for the people who can't do it that way, because even though technically I used to do it that way, but I didn't used to queue up for dungeons. This is one advantage of having 2 accounts. I would get like my character, and I'd get 110 characters on the other account to basically just boost them through dungeons. That is not going to be as efficient as it was. They need, and also they're getting rid of the XP. Well, they've already got rid of the XP elixirs, haven't they? So you can't even use those. They need more ways to level, like invasions or the current Scarab Lord event. Well, yes, possibly. I mean, having variety in what you can do for leveling would help. Dungeons like Moradin almost feel like vanilla. That's because Moradin was always awful. Moradin's a nightmare of a place. It takes forever just to find your way into the instance. And there's 2 of them. So, you know, to find yourself way to the right entrance as well is not easy. And your stick doesn't work anymore. Like, there was a quest you could do, and with the Scepter of Celebras, and you could automatically get into it, and then you could teleport to the last bit. I still have the stick, but it doesn't work anymore. Vanilla wasn't awful. But Moradin was. And the zone it was in was dull as well. Desolate. Oh my god. I don't actually know how I had the stomach to complete enough quests to actually get into Moradin. To actually get the quest for Moradin. Somehow I did. I liked Alderman. In fact, I had to like Alderman, or at least part of it, because as an enchanter, that's where the... Because you didn't just used to have trainers for professions, you had specific trainers. So when you got to a particular level in a profession, you had to seek out a specific NPC. And the master enchanter was in Alderman. So you had to get a dungeon group together just to go and visit the bloody trainer. So I'm glad that disappeared, because that was a bit of a pain. Oh yes, everything stops working as I get older. Like, it's taken me longer and longer to bully gnomes, or, you know, into submission, I'm noticing. Admittedly, they are reducing in number. I can see a day when there are no gnomes at all. But, you know, it's coming at a cost. It's no good just the gnome shadow priest just leaving the guild. They're supposed to just race change. I'm sure their main reason for not liking the game is because they're a gnome. They just need this explaining to them. But they're not listening. They don't listen to me. I've not been in the guild long enough. But anyway, evening Lamnakan. Hi, I am, thank you. You are joining a bit late. I was just about to announce that we're sort of nearly finishing. If there's any few last little comments, obviously we'll go through those, and then in the next few minutes we'll call it a close, and I'll bang this up on YouTube. And Vanilla, you're going to make a gnome priest called Thete. No, you're not. Because as soon as those forums, those servers go live, I am name blocking every single realm. I refuse to have a gnome called Thete. Actually, no, I can't. Well, actually, someone did do that. I've lost it now. Someone screenshotted and sent me an image of a gnome called Thete. It's not fun. Outrageous. Where's the thing gone? Oh, there it is. Gnomes aren't resistant to me. They'll never learn resistance to me. Because I adapt my... my tactics. For example, someone was explaining to me, where was it now? Oh no, it was on YouTube. Where's that comment? Dirty and evil trick on Argus. When you get Soul Bomb, you can Divine Shield to instantly burst the bomb while being immune, but people around you can still take damage. So all I really need to do is to wait for a gnome to not be on full health, and go and stand next to the gnome and blow them up. You can sort of do it on Antoran High Command, but unfortunately I'd probably get shouted at. There's endless ways to get people killed on Antoran High Command. You just wait for a gnome to be on low health and step on a mine. And you get a retribution passive as well. It's like, there's at least 3 reasons to do it. No, you can't be a gnome priest, that is true if it's classic. Gnomes can't heal. I think we're past it now. There's no harm. I'm not a liability to the same extent on Agrimar or Argus. I mean, Coven was the main melee hating one, I would say. I don't think the rest of the bosses I think have been okay. Admittedly, it would have been, you know, you don't want to have too few ranged on doggies because, you know, managing to get the DPS, the health on them the same at the end, obviously helps to be ranged. Oh yeah, LFR, yeah. I don't think anyone needs panic in LFR, quite frankly. The chances of, I mean, admittedly, when I went in on my Shaman on Saturday to Argus for the first time, the group had wiped, but I mean, you know, apart from that, most of the bosses I think are straightforward. On LFR, that is, on LFR. See you later, Sane. Ah, well, you know, Sargeras' Rage making anything more than 6 melee a nightmare doesn't matter. I mean, 6 melee in a group is okay. Most rosters are okay. If you can, like, I'm talking about fights where you don't even want to take 5, let alone 6. Being able to take 6 is okay. LFR is still too hard. It needs to be impossible to wipe if 10 players aren't AFK. It almost is impossible to wipe. The double experience. I don't even know how you get a referral link in Star Wars. I'll have to look it up. I'll look at it after this, after I've shut this down. But I don't even know how to do it. I'll have to Google it. You get loads of experience in Star Wars, The Old Republic. As it is. You get like experience tokens somewhere on the website. Yes. I shall have a look at it. I'm going to shut this up now anyway. So thanks very much for coming on, everyone. I shall be back obviously next week with this, as well as tomorrow back with our farm raiding, which again we're going to be another person down, I guess. Which actually is not ideal, because it means an ever-increasing chance that I'll have to do Portal Boss and Doggies, which not only don't drop any loot that I want, they're not even very fun bosses, quite frankly. I especially don't like Portal Keeper. Really don't like it, but anyway. Yeah, have a good night, everyone, and I will see you later.